From Trimble Construction, you're listening to the Connected Construction Show, where we connect you to the contractors, owners, designers, engineers, and construction professionals who are finding better ways to work. And now, here's your host, Matt Sprague.
Hello and welcome everybody back to the Connected Construction Show. I am your host, Matt Sprague. As always, we are thrilled to have our guest this week. We have Roger Krulak. Roger is the president and co-founder of FullStack Modular. Roger, welcome to the show.
Matt, thank you so much.
Before we kind of dive in, I want to talk a little bit more specifically around the industry of modular development, modular construction. But can you give us a little bit of like a commercial on what FullStack Modular is?
So FullStack Modular is a fully volumetric manufacturer of an all steel based mid to high rise dense urban environment focused building system specifically focused on multifamily student housing and hotels for the most part.
Awesome. So when we start to talk about like the core of construction, there seems to be like this resistance to embracing industrialized construction, if you will, beyond MEP components. So, like what's your take on that? What kind of needs to shift to really kind of embrace the entirety?
So I think let's start out with a couple things. First of all, it is not only a hot topic, but it is getting embraced all over the world, and it is also getting embraced in the United States. And your question is why isn't it going faster since it's so logical, which is a great question. And the answer to that question is that modular building using industrialized construction in a design process requires a paradigm shift to mostly a design build process. And the design build process is also concurrently on the uptake for the reasons that the adversarial relationship of a design bid build process that has existed in this country forever has been broken since it started. And now, because interest rates are high and demand is high and capacity is low, you're getting can we do this any better? And that's sort of what's driving the shift. The resistance to that is, of course, government institutions, large construction companies, public institutions, who all move historically glacially slow, are not quick to uptake that. But to their credit, we're seeing lots of it now. It's not happening at the speed I would like it, or that's going to help the country tomorrow. But we are seeing the dam opening and the openness and the focus on it, frankly, happening relatively often.
That's fantastic. So I know we're starting to see the same thing with departments of transportation in making that transition away from the historically prevalent design bid build type of scenario. And I want to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. So I'm going to kind of play it back to you. And I'm going to try to maybe simplify it, maybe oversimplify it. So let me know if I'm oversimplifying it.
Yep.
Is essentially the traction that you're seeing and the use of a design build is essentially proliferating the collaboration between designers and the builders so that the design is smarter and ready to build, as opposed to having to go through all of the iterations during the historical design bid build process.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes. I mean, if I could just sort of clarify and nuance that a bit. What FullStack does in many other, modular companies, I'm not a huge fan of the word, or industrialized construction. It's ill-defined no matter which one. The Singaporeans, to their credit, call it prefabricated, pre-finished volumetric construction, which is what we do, which is much easier understood than just modular, which really has no out. I mean, I don't even know what modular is, and I do it all the time. And so what we do is it's a system for creating the built environment, specifically mostly multifamily spaces I described. And so the design team and the owners need to share that system as part of the agency with which the building is created. And so in order to do that, it has to be collaborative, because if they don't use the system, then you're just, you're not only iterating, you're one step forward, 8 steps back, 1 step forward, 8 steps back. And so we're sort of at the phase where people are like, oh, I sort of get it. Like, this system is different than that system. And this one has, concrete cores, and this one is all inclusive, and this one finishes the facade, and this one doesn't. And so they're sort of getting it. And there is a large contingent of the AEC industry that is understanding the value proposition associated.
Awesome. So I'm going to read you. So I'm going to give full credit to Rachel, our producer of this show, that she went to Reddit and found this comment. So we found this comment, like I said, from Reddit, talking about the weaknesses of modular construction. All right, so I'm going to start by I'll read it, and then I'll ask a question. So that there's 4 bullet points. So I think the post had, here are the strengths and here are the weaknesses. And what I'm going to read you are the perceived weaknesses from this.
How surprising you're going to read the weaknesses, but go on. Anyway.
So quality is usually an issue in 9 to 10 that this person has seen. I don't think there has ever been a time where we got a modular building that did not need some additional work. Modular constructions, in my experience, usually shipped incomplete because they can't meet schedule. Local code is different everywhere, so these modular constructions are usually custom built anyways. In areas with strong unions, they will not allow for modular construction in some of the cases. All right. So, first off, how would you react to what this person is saying? And then from your own perspective, what are some of the major issues that you're seeing with modular projects? And essentially, what would be the advice moving forward? So there's a lot of questions there that I gave.
That's a lot of questions. Let me see what I cover, and then you keep track and let me know what I missed. So from a quality perspective, obviously, there are and have been some issues. And we're in the AEC industry, and if you sort of track the world of construction, I don't know that it's that different than any other construction process. There are problems in almost every construction job. So, I just want to sort of level set the reality. And one of the things that I just mentioned to you is the need to engage in a design build process with a team. Most of those projects, I would wager highly, were not done in that way. And as a result of that, they tried to, and I hate this word and I hate the process, modularize a building that was designed conventionally, or they engaged with an architect who said they were modular experts, and they may be modular experts, but they're not necessarily knowledgeable about the system with which they're trying to build. And as a result, nor were they willing to share agency with that system. And as a result, that was a problem. So that's sort of the first thing. So I think that it is. I know that there have been problems, and a lot of them are related to that. Not all of them. It is construction, and you are relying on a lot of suppliers and workers to do very specific work, and that does take honing. So the second question you asked was about work in the field because they're not done right, or not finished on time. And I absolutely 100% claim that that's related to the first thing that I just told you about, which was it wasn't designed so that it could be built in an industrialized fashion. So yeah, it didn't work the way it was supposed to. And the design wasn't completed in a timely fashion to actually industrialize it intelligently. And what I mean by that is in the design bid build process, that which you bid is never what you build, right? So, you bid a job that is completely undesigned in today's world, and then hope that you've covered yourself for whatever the ultimate need is. And then, of course, all of the trades mostly do their own design because the developer, whether that be public or private, doesn't want to pay for the full design of the building to be done intelligently and in an organized fashion. That's that problem. Plenty, thousands and thousands of mods in the last 3 years have been delivered, completed. Now, the level of completion has a lot to do with the system also. So like our system ships with the facade on and fully finished. Many wood manufacturers ship it close to that, but they don't put the facade on. They may have to attach to cores. So, I don't know exactly what the comment is, but the perception is partially accurate, but it may be simply a system differential. So it's hard to really say that. As it relates to the unions, now we have been signatories with the New York building trades for a long time, and we've now moved our factory to Connecticut and California, and we are negotiating the CBAs for that. So we have a very good relationship with the trades everywhere. Well, almost everywhere, everywhere we are at this point. So that I don't think is so much of a problem. And to be fair, because not every modular company is a signatory with the unions, cities with very strong union presence, for instance, like Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, there are tons of modular buildings going up there, and they're not union signatories. So I don't know. I think they're complaining, but the reality is, I think, worth noting that the unions control less than 5% of the U.S. housing market. So they're not building anything anyway. Shouldn't say that. They're not building a lot right now. There's a big market share that is not. So we believe in unions, frankly, and we collaborate with them, and we have signed agreements with them, and we think that there's an opportunity for market growth on the union side and also collaboration. So that's that. And then local jurisdiction code differential, of course. I mean, we all don't like that. And the system doesn't change that much. I mean, so our system is pretty compatible with everywhere. I mean, sometimes the forces are, say, seismic versus wind versus, salt erosion. And our system is very responsive to that, so it can adapt quite easily. And the thing that people forget is that the sort of 50, 60-year-old HUD manufactured housing process in almost every state in the United States has existed forever, and it's incredibly efficient. So the modular design side of it and the modular approval side of it is generally, not always, generally state-focused, same codes. So yeah, I mean, there are variations, but that doesn't really stand in the way of much. Yeah, it just doesn't.
I've been kind of making my check marks here with my pencil. You kind of hit all of those things. All right, outside of that Reddit comment, any major issues that you've encountered with modular projects?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just talked about the things that need to happen on all those levels, but I think that things are the big two, the blockers associated with adapting the process, because it's not as much a technology, although there's many technologies involved. It's a process. The first thing is obviously financing. The AEC industry, building the built environment is expensive. And one of the stakeholders is whoever is providing the debt for that. And they are trying, but not really at the point where they've adapted their process to something that's built offsite. So that is, it's happening. There are people who are doing it. There are companies who are only doing this, but it's not prolific. So if you have a developer in an area that doesn't really know who to talk to about modular, they're going to call them up and they're going to say, no, we'll just pay for it when it gets here. And then you have a whole big conversation. So that's one of the blockers that's working itself out, but it's not a tomorrow thing. It's going to take some time. Like I said, even though there are specialists who are readily available and open to doing it, and some big banks who've done, several multi-modular projects. The second thing, again, I mentioned it earlier, is that without a design build process, you can't really effectively design a modular building. So that's a shift that's required. And the third thing, I think, and probably the most important, is that when a building is built off-site, there is a scope of work because it has to ultimately rest somewhere. There is a scope of work that has to be done on-site. And that on-site work is very small as compared to the whole project cost. And, the general contractors often don't have the tools with which to define the scope and organize and receive an appropriately sized pricing for that. So the value of modular isn't realized by the developer because it's eaten up by the subtrades and as a result of the general contractor. There are so many right now that are trying, but it's not quite there. And so if you have 20% of the work on site and it costs 50% of the total job, you can tell there's a 30% something. Maybe it's not all, but but you get the idea. So that's also something that needs to be refined. We've spent lots of money and time helping, with that process, but it is, of course, now just imagine you're trying to compare three, volumetric modular manufacturers. Their system is completely different. Their scope is completely different. The process is completely different. And you're going to try to level the bid. It's almost impossible. Especially even if you know what you're talking about, it's almost impossible. And then most people are not super well educated on it. Even if they're the head of modular in a large GC, they don't necessarily, know how to level all of the systems because it's a lot to know. Anyway, sorry, that was very much a run-on sentence, but that's an answer.
No. I thought that was fantastic, and your answer to that very long question that I provided was meticulous. So I really appreciate it. So it's time now for this part of the show called that we do a hot take. So there was a Harvard Business Review article, and within it lists the uncertainty about demand for the product as a barrier to the industrialized building. Yet we know that America is short around 3.2 million homes, and that
I think that's like half of what it really is, by the way. I've seen numbers like 7.5, but that's
all right. So we know they're short around 7.5 million homes, and that 1.6 billion people in the world lack adequate housing. So what's the disconnect?
Well, I think we've talked about the disconnect, right? I mean, we know what the problems are, and you are correct. Like, look, modular industrialized construction for the AEC industry and specifically housing is an incredibly efficient solution for some of those problems, and embraced, they are an incredible opportunity to start to chip away at that which we know we have a problem. I mean, our capacity as an industry is not anywhere meeting need, and all the delays we've talked about and the increased cost. I mean, one of the values of industrialized construction is that you can you can affect productivity and thereby lower the cost and increase the throughput. That's pretty much impossible to do on a construction job with any large, with any large variance. I mean, you can obviously bring things in on time by organizing it correctly, but you can't save, 20% on labor by doing that. So the opportunity is there and the uptake is happening. It's interesting. I sort of think like in the hours and the world of 24/7 news, even our industry, which is, there are plenty of adversaries of this industry, which I don't really understand, but I know that they exist. The reporting is really focused on explaining a problem that we know exists and we have to do something about, just like climate change or regional conflicts or whatever it is, and we report about them today, but like they don't get resolved today. So I think and very few people report good news. I mean, there's a couple of websites that have come see the good news, because we don't as humans do that. So I think there's lots of good news, and I do think it solves some of the issues we have, and the things that we've talked about today will drive towards that. But there's not going to be a turn on the switch moment where all of a sudden every modular, everything that can be modular will be modular, and there'll be capacity for it. It is a significant paradigm shift as the AEC industry.
Yeah, and you know what? You started with that, right? In terms of that term, the paradigm shift, and you talk about the adversaries, and it's not adversaries to this. It's in general adversaries to change. There's always adversaries to change, even though
the human condition for the most part. Yeah. And I think I can't leave without giving a plug, knowing where I'm talking. One of the most important things about resolving, industrialized construction, certainly volumetric like we do, is adequate metrology being used in the factory and on site. Because if you think about building off site, you're building to a theoretical reality. And then that theoretical reality has to match what's happening on site. And without the tools to do that, it does lead the opportunity for massive problems. Because if you're building something on site, you just adjust it, not necessarily in a good way. We can talk about that for another 2 hours. But without that, the actual manufacturing offsite matching the theoretical design of that building, you're going to have problems.
Well, Roger, this was a great conversation. As I said, your answers were meticulous. You kind of hit every single point. It was really a joy having you on the show, and I really appreciate your time today. And, everybody out there listening and watching, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, stay connected.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Connected Construction Show. For more information, visit us at connectedconstructionshow.com.